We're living in uncertain times, and that's creating a lot of anxiety for investors at present. So in today's podcast, which is one I've recorded together with my good friend and share trading expert Louise Bedford, we talk about how to manage the uncertainty that's in the world at the moment so that you're a better investor, better business person, and I guess so that you have less anxiety. Now, today's show's a little longer than normal. It's one I recorded for Louise for her audience, but the information was so good I asked, can we please share it with you, my audience? It's almost 50 minutes, but during our chat, Louise and I share our many years of experience, and I hope at the end of it you're going to have a much better level of clarity and certainty. You see, Louise and I are both students of psychology and how it affects investing. In fact, Louise has got a degree in psychology. And we both realise how our current financial environment, the uncertainty, is causing anxiety for a lot of people. Now, of course, it's your brain's hefty responsibility to keep you safe. And that means it hates life's inevitable uncertainty. And currently your brain's constantly updating the world, making judgments about what's safe and what isn't. To the human mind, uncertainty equals danger. And if your brain doesn't know what's around the corner, it can't keep you out of harm's way, can it? So what happens is your brain assumes the worst. It over-personalises threats, it jumps to conclusions. I guess we're hardwired to overestimate threats and underestimate our ability to handle them. So, as I said, the intention of my chat with Louise today is to give you some clarity. And we're going to discuss a whole lot of topics. Let me quickly give you a rundown of some of the things we're going to discuss, because while we start off a little slow, please stick with today's show, because we're going to talk about what to do when all hell breaks loose in the economy. We're going to discuss why the Reserve Bank's raising interest rates. We're going to talk about some of the protective measures you should put in place now. We talk about what property investors should be doing currently and what you can do to maintain emotional consistency. Louise and I discuss why you should look back to look forward and why it's important to have an archetype. I'm going to share with you my thoughts about the real meaning of money and some advice about developing resilience. And Louise is going to talk a bit about how to get out of the languishing funk a lot of people have now after COVID and the Great Resignation. So, as I said, lots to discuss. Welcome to today's show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Hey, it's Louise Bedford here, the host of talkingtrading.com.au. I am so excited to bring you every week the latest about the share market, about what, when and where to trade. And this week, I have got a very special guest, Michael Yardney. Now, Michael and I have been friends for years and years. Michael has his own podcast and we're doing a bit of a simulcast with this. Now, the world has been going crazy. We've got huge inflation. We've got interest rates growing. There's a war. There's doom and gloom around the share market and around property. And Michael and I are here to tell you that tough times don't last, but tough people do. So I really want you to pay attention to every single word that we have to say to you. There is so many gems that we're going to be able to tweak, and we'll be able to reveal some absolutely fantastic things that you can use in your trading and in your property investing right now. So Michael, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on. For everybody who's not as familiar with you, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about your history.
Well, I've been investing for close to 5 decades now, Louise. I'm a little bit older than you. And I thought I was really smart. I bought my first investment property in the 1970s. And interestingly, a new Labor government came in just after I bought it, the Gough-Whitlam government, and inflation rose and interest rates rose. Inflation actually got to around 15% in those days. And no one told me about it. I didn't have any economic knowledge about it. I just bought close to where I lived and close to where I went to school. But interestingly, inflation made the value of my property go up. At that time, I paid my half year. I went half to my parents, $18,000. I paid a $2,000 deposit. And from that, I've grown a multi-million-dollar property portfolio. For the last 20 years or so, I've been assisting people from around Australia, and my team have now grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. I've authored 9 books, 2 of them translated into a number of foreign languages and become international bestsellers. And I'm still having fun in property, helping clients. And like you, I enjoy the podcasts and the videos, Louise.
Oh, fantastic. Look, I think that's one of the reasons why we get along so well. A lot of the principles that your people need to apply in property investing need to actually also be applied in the share market in order for us to succeed. I believe
Louise, successful business people, entrepreneurs, traders, all share similar traits. They just express them in different forms of business, don't they?
They do, yeah. Some of my best share traders are actually superb property investors. So, Michael, let's cut to the chase here. I want to hear your views. As I mentioned, we have got pretty much a perfect storm for people to feel fear, and all hell is broken loose in the world. I want to hear your views. What can people do to not only soothe themselves, but how can they handle this in terms of strategies and tactics?
Well, if you're talking about the current economic circumstances, most people have never experienced inflation. We've had many years of low inflation. So people are getting spooked, and the media is doing a great job at it. But so is the Reserve Bank, because what's happened is we are now in a period where the Reserve Bank is wanting to dampen demand. So let's go back a step. Inflation is when the value of prices go up, but it's actually more than that. It's actually related to the devaluing of your money, so you can't buy as much. And we know that when we go to the supermarket or the petrol stations. And it also has to do with the extra money that's flowing into the economy, or has flown into the economy. So go back only a couple of years, and there was worries about coronavirus killing hundreds of thousands of people. There was talk about 11, 12, 15% unemployment. There was talk about a property market crash and a stock market crash. And so our government went into a system of quantitative easing, which is actually, in essence, putting more money into the system, and they paid it forward, and they gave us money, and they gave us grants, and they stopped all those terrible things happening. But now in some ways we've got to pay it back. So what's happened is, over that period of time when we were stuck in our homes, in our COVID cocoons, many of us couldn't spend. Others of us stashed our cash, paid forward our mortgages, paid down our credit cards, put money in our offset accounts. So we had huge ability, now that the world's becoming normal again, to start spending. And we are. Some of us think, hey, we deserve it. We've been locked up for a long time. So that's pushing up prices because there's more demand. But it's a perfect storm in some ways, because unfortunately there are those terrible things happening overseas, where the war with Ukraine and the lockdowns in China, creating supply chain issues, food issues, fuel issues. So lack of supply, extra demand, prices go up. And now people are saying to the Reserve Bank, how do you get it wrong? How couldn't you get it right? But they did all that they could 2 years ago. They lowered interest rates to stimulate the economy. Now they've got to stop the stimulation and, in fact, do the opposite, dampen demand. But that's where the issue comes, Louise, because if they dampen demand too much, we may go into a recession. And that's what a lot of the talk is about. So why would they raise the price of your mortgage, my mortgage, interest rates, when they're trying to lower inflation? And I guess the thought is that you've got to pay your mortgage, you've got to pay the interest rates. And for that reason, people have a little bit less money in their pocket. It's like taking a pay cut. And so therefore you spend less. At the same time, there's a lot of media slowing down demand because if consumer confidence drops, you don't spend as much. The problem is if business confidence drops, Louise, they don't employ as many people. They find it hard to put up prices. So we're getting a perfect storm for a period of quite some months. This is not going to go away for a while yet. And it's not just to do with the war in Ukraine, but the petrol prices, the food shortages, the other shortages haven't flown through into the system yet. So we're going to have a period of high inflation and, unfortunately for some, at least they're prepared, higher interest rates. And that's affecting the stock market because they're worried about how businesses, the big companies of the world are going to work, and they're worried about the value of their home. So no doubt at the moment, people, Louise, are very worried, aren't they?
They really are. And wherever there is fear and volatility in our own emotions, that does translate into the vehicle that we're trading or investing in. You know, I've certainly seen with my traders, they've had to really be careful with their mindsets so that they can get through this and realize that they do have protective measures in place. So let's talk about some of those protective measures. For my traders, one of the things that I'm suggesting is that they limit their access to the news. The difficulty with hearing all of this input and getting that onslaught of emotion, sometimes what that can do is hair trigger you out of positions that were just fine and that you really should have stayed in. We have our stop losses in share trading to protect us. Michael, what about for your property investors? What should they be doing?
Well, let's go back a step. We know that fear and greed drive markets. And a couple of years ago, in the booming times of the stock market and the property market, greed drove those markets, fear of missing out, particularly in the property market. Today in property, it's the opposite, phobia rather than FOMO, fear of buying early, maybe in a falling market, and the fear of looking silly. But just like your traders have a trading plan, I always recommend property investors have a strategic property plan so that they don't make their decisions based on emotions. It's just the same in property. And you shouldn't change your long-term strategic wealth creation plan because of short-term influences. Clearly, the stock market is more volatile, more liquid, and so the rules are slightly different there. But I think, like you, the first thing is turn off the media and be very, very careful who you listen to, because just look at how all those predictions came out only 2 years ago. It wasn't much more than 2 years ago where we were told that we were going to have 15% unemployment and that the world was going to fall apart. Now, sure, they were unusual circumstances, but forecasters tend to get it wrong. But the media loves negative headlines. It can't get much more headlines on coronavirus, and unfortunately the Ukraine war doesn't get the top headlines anymore. So they love doomsayers because they sound sensible. The people that say just stick to a plan and take a long-term view and don't get caught up, they don't sound sensible at times like this, do they?
Absolutely. Do you know, I do feel as well that when we are caught in that vortex of information and that onslaught, is that we're more likely to say yes to a lot of things because it takes energy to say no. So another thing to consider is to watch where you're spending your energy and your time. If you're getting caught up in all of this and that you're finding that you're dwelling too much on this negativity, be careful, because there are many different things that are saying in the psychological studies that the more overwhelmed we become, the more we say yes. So just realize the importance of spending some time alone, being able to have time to meditate, gather your thoughts, write in a journal. All of these are soft skills that we need to recover from situations like this. And even droughts, I'm calling a drought a time where the money doesn't flow as easily. Let's just define it as that. So if money isn't coming into your household as easily as it was, Michael, what are some of the things that you usually suggest to your investors that they should do?
Since the media is likely to keep feeding us headlines of fear for much of this year, I think part of the focus is on educating yourself, because the economy is affected by a whole lot of factors and most of them are out of your control. So rather than worrying about all these things that you can't control, step back, as we've said before. take a long-term view, and then focus on things you can control, whether it's property, shares, Bitcoin. Booms don't last forever, and neither do downturns. So think long-term. Don't necessarily look for the quick wins, and don't listen to those negative messages in the media. I agree with you. And as we've said, don't allow the emotional decisions to drive you. But I think it's also worth taking comfort in what happened in 2020, what happened in 2008 during the global financial crisis, during those other times as well. This is just part of the cycle. So if you take a loss in the stock market or in the property market, that's just a fee for entry. That's part of a fee of being there in the long term, not a fine for doing something that you shouldn't have been doing. Downturns are just part of the cycle, and they will end at some point. So learn from history and get the right people around you. I think that's one of the things that you said smartly, that if you listen to the wrong people, it just keeps feeding the negativity. So listen to people who've actually had some experience. The challenge at the moment, of course, Louise, is that most of the journalists and those, therefore, who are putting the messages out in the media haven't ever lived through these times. And interestingly, most of the commentators, the ones with all these terrible track records, they haven't been around long enough either.
It's true. I mean, it even goes back to way back when the tulip boom, the Poseidon. This is how people go. We love that mania. We love that manic behavior. And then, of course, the flip side of that is depression, isn't it? So that swinging from one to another like a pendulum, that's what we have to guard ourselves against. Not only looking at it from the outside, but coming from within also.
Now, with property, though, Louise, if I could just explain, because it's a bit different to trading because it's a long-term investment, you've got to recognise that these times create tremendous opportunities, a window of opportunities opening up for smart investors who can take advantage of it. So now's the time, if you're in property, to buy quality assets, remembering that there are markets within markets. 2 years ago, every property went up. The Australian residential property market went up $2 trillion in 2021 alone. So secondary properties, main road properties, and as well as A-grade properties. Now there's a flight to quality. So my suggestion is get your finances right first. I think for everyone, it's important. If you're a homeowner on a variable mortgage, it's actually not a bad idea to speak to your mortgage broker and see if you can refinance, because I know that people are refinancing at discounted mortgage rates. And if you can, build up a healthy financial buffer, put some money in your offset accounts just to prepare yourself for a rainy day. If you look for certainty, unfortunately, people have missed the boat in the fixed rate interest loans. Louise, I got it right. I very rarely do. Early this year, and it's not a recommendation to others, I actually locked in a large portion of my loans on very low fixed interest rates just before it all went up. But I've usually I get it wrong. But maybe if you need certainty, if you've got a home loan, you can actually ask your bank or your broker, you can fix a portion of it if you're wanting that certainty. But fixed rates are now much higher than variable rates, and probably too high, in my opinion, to lock in a large portion of your loans. If you're a seller, if you're wanting to sell, don't be spooked by the current market. If you've got to sell, most sellers are buyers. If you're looking to upgrade, to downgrade, you're buying and selling your property in the same market. Again, a bit different to the trading market of share traders. And so therefore, it doesn't matter, especially if you're upgrading. If you think you're in a good position, you may get a bit less for your home now, but you're going to pay a bit less for the other property. And for investors, as I started to say, have a plan, have a strategy. And if the time's right for you, if your finances are right, if you've got a secure job, it's a good time to take advantage when you could buy a property without the FOMO, without the fear of missing out, without the rushed decisions. You can do your due diligence and buy the best asset you can. Louise, I found strategic investors don't get fussed with the stages of the cycle. Instead, they just concentrate on doing their own thing, growing their portfolio, investing in the right properties, the right shares, when it suits them, when it fits in their strategy.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, from a share trading perspective, one of the aspects that Chris Tate, my business partner, and I continually reinforce is using an archetype. So an archetype is the perfect trade, the one that you wish every trade looked like. And what you aim to do is you aim to match your new positions to the chart of that archetype. So what it does, it gives you a guideline, a very specific guideline about what you're looking for. So the way I think about it is when I was dating all that time ago, I had a checklist. Yes, I actually did, written down on paper about the partner that I wanted to be with. So, he had
Why doesn't that surprise me, Louise?
Look, honestly, it was a good strategy. It really was. So I knew what I was aiming for, and luckily I got that. So not everybody has that checklist in the first place, and then we wonder why we're not happy later. So I'm not saying a checklist will cover you for every situation, but certainly in the share market and in the property market, if you know what good looks like, you've got a chance of being able to fulfill it in your very next investment. So for me, for example, for those of you that are shares oriented, I'm looking for the overall market to be going up, and I call that my macro. And with my archetype, I'm looking for the actual share to be above its 30-week moving average, and I'm looking for a breakout above a line of resistance on heavy relative volume above its own volume moving average. Now, I know I've said a lot of jargon for your property people. They're probably going, what? But I want you to know that there is a way to learn this. This is not beyond your capabilities. You have the ability to do property, so you can generalize that to another vehicle. And then you've got the best of both worlds. I know with Michael, your services, I use your services professionally. We use you to help identify properties, but also to use the property management aspect. So turning to people who know what they're doing, who have seen those peaks and troughs, those booms and busts, I think is essential.
I think that's important also because I know you and Chris Tate have got an amazing track record. We've been friends and professional colleagues for a long, long time, and you've been there for a long time. At the moment, last year and the year before, during the booming times, a whole swag of new, let's call them enthusiastic amateurs, came out giving people advice on the stock market, on the share market, on trading, and even on property as well. So it'll be interesting to see where they're going to be now in these more challenging times. I think you've got to go with somebody who's got a proven track record.
Yeah, I truly do. And I think it also comes down to some of your own principles and some of your own values. I think knowing what money means to you, knowing how it applies to your life is very, very important. And to pre-consider that, regardless of market conditions, is absolutely essential. Now, Michael, you and I have spent a long time talking with each other behind the scenes, behind closed doors, about money, getting our principles really crystal clear and being each other's unreasonable friend, challenging each other on different aspects of our own psyches. So, Michael, perhaps you could define, what does money mean to you?
Well, Louise, I think it means something different to me. I know it means something different to me when I was young. When I was young, I chased money. I wanted more money because I came from a poor background. I saw other people went on holidays. Other people had lunch money at school and I didn't. I had to bring my lunch. And so I chased money for the wrong reasons. For the first third half of my life, I guess I've learned that money, any problem that money can solve, isn't really a problem at all. So money's actually currently given me options. It's given me the lifestyle choices to help my family, my children, my grandchildren. It's given me the ability to help charities today. And I believe it's important when you get to a particular level of wealth, you should help other people up as well. And I know you do that with your education and we do it through charities. But Louise, it actually took me a long time to realize that true wealth isn't anything about money. It's what you're left with when they take all your money away. So to me, to be wealthy, different from rich, you need money plus, health. We know that, look, over the last couple of years with COVID, how important that is. No use being in hospital if you've got all the money. It's money, and also you need somebody to love and somebody to love you. I think to be truly wealthy, you need money and time to be able to enjoy it, not the time pressures. I also believe it's important to have the ability to grow, to learn. You need money plus spirituality. So wealth, different to money, comes from all those other things, and money just works in those areas where it's useful.
I love that. And I think we can lose sight of that. You know, when we do have this time, such as now, where things do seem a little bit doomsday-ish and the sky is falling in, we forget that we have multiple resources in other areas. So to remind yourself of that, to be grateful, to have gratitude, even to suggest that for your children. So around the dinner table, my kids know that I'm going to say, what was your high for the day? What was your low for the day? And what actually are you grateful for? And we try to name 3 things, and we choose a different person each night so it doesn't get boring. But they start to think of that throughout the day, just in case I challenge them at night. So I think that there is a hell of a lot of research around that, to know that you are more than just your income, and to realize that, hey, you've probably got friends there that you haven't spoken to for a while. You've got your partner there that might be going through something. You could actually reach out to others, because if you extend that hand where you're initiating, that can go very well for you as well, because you feel like, okay, now I'm getting myself together because I'm helping other people. Take your eyes off yourself, put them on others. Very, very important.
Louise, I think that I'm sure you can't be wealthy unless you're grateful. So our kids are no longer at home, but every night before I close my eyes, or when I close my eyes and go to sleep, I think of what I'm grateful for the day. And it actually has to be something different to what I thought of the day before. It's something I've learned also. So I'm grateful for my wife, my family, my health, the wealth I've got. But you can't keep saying that every night. You've got to find something new as well, don't you?
You really do. Actually, I'm doing private yoga lessons with my daughter, Ash, and it's fantastic because we really do bond in that session. And at the very end, often the instructor who we've had for the last, couple of years with yoga, she'll say, think of something that you want to thank yourself for, and think of something that you want to thank somebody else for. And I like that. I like that a lot. You might know that I did a card a day challenge for myself a few years ago, Michael, where I wrote 1 card per day, every day for 1 year. So after the first 3 months, I ran out of people because, how many people do you actually know? And I started writing cards to random people in restaurants who've served me well, people from my past that I hadn't been in touch with, teachers from my school that I managed to track down. And that was a wonderful way to be able to make me feel like I was expansive instead of contracting. I think so much of our life, when we're under pressure, we contract and we shrink. Whereas if we can work out ways to grow, that can be part of the solution.
Well, it also helped other people. I bet you those cards, I know when I received mine, made the other person happy, made the other person smile. And when you are generous and when you do help somebody, it makes you happy. So it's a great way of remaining happy. Sometimes you're happy for 10, 15 minutes, sometimes for an hour when you get that phone call from somebody saying thank you for the card. But generosity has great benefits for you as well as for the other person.
They've even shown with dementia patients that even if that dementia patient doesn't actually even remember you or even remember that you came to visit, their happiness levels are increased by having a visitor. So if you've got somebody in your life that is experiencing that, I think a lot of us do these days, that don't think that your efforts are wasted, just know within your heart that that is making a difference at some level to that person. Yeah. So, Michael, what advice are you giving people right now about trying to maintain their mindset and have resilience?
Well, resilience is that quality of just continuing on during the challenging times, during the difficult times. You've got to Some people call it mental toughness. I think that's a term that came from the sports arena. But how are people going to get through all this? I think there's a combination of things. You've got to be self-confident. You've got to be comfortable in yourself. You've got to understand what's happening by educating yourself. You've got to learn just to control the bits of your life that you can control, be relaxed and comfortable, and turn off, as you said, including whether it's the yoga, the meditation, the exercise for a lot of people, doing things that you enjoy. And I believe it's important to hang around the right people. So people who have got mental toughness, people who can get through these challenging times, I found also that they're emotionally intelligent. They got EQ as well as, I guess, IQ. You can't be mentally tough without the ability to fully understand and tolerate all the negative emotions that are going on and how to cope with them. I think the other thing is get rid of toxic people at the moment. Be careful who you hang around, and don't waste your time with people who are bringing you down.
Yeah, I agree.
One last thing, Louise, just be comfortable with change. Most of us don't like change, but I know mentally tough people, they are flexible. They're constantly adapting. They know that the fear of change is going to paralyze them, and it's going to be a major threat to their success or their happiness. So if you see change lurking around the corner, just accept it. But maybe one other thing, learn to say no. Sometimes you don't have to do things if people come to you, if opportunities there. I guess with the opportunities, I've actually made more money by things I've said no to, the potential opportunities than I've said yes to. But if you've got the own self-confidence, commit to your own way of doing things.
Yeah, I love it. You know, the other aspect that I've been researching, it was actually written up in the New York Times by Adam Grant. It was an article that totally went viral. It's a concept called languishing. When you were saying about paralyzed, you know, that word is an interesting word, isn't it? I think a lot of us, because we've endured a lot of lockdowns and a lot of uncertainty, that some of us have actually had some genuinely psychological shake-ups that we haven't had to experience in the past. Now, this term languishing, when I first read this article, it really made a difference to me, because I thought what I'm going through and what a lot of us are going through, because I'm speaking from the heart here, it's not burnout, it's not depression. I'm not really in the point where I'm doing anything that's going to harm myself. I'm not manic. Like, what is this feeling? This feeling of blah, the meh, you know, I don't think I can get out of bed because it's too much effort. Or if I do get out of bed, I'll just do the necessary chores and then just wait for nighttime. Now, asking around with my traders, this is quite common at the moment. Whenever we have things that we can't control, we do have this potential to languish. So I'd like to talk about some of the specifics that the research has really revealed about what we can do to get ourselves out of this languishing state. Michael, have you seen this in any of your property investors?
Yes, I have. Fortunately, I've been so busy that it hasn't affected me, but I definitely know people who, the blah is actually a really good word. It's not depression, but it's just easy not to go out. It's cold, it's wet, it's miserable. Maybe I'll catch coronavirus. I don't have to do things. It's actually taken away some of the fun in life.
Yeah, it has. That's exactly it. It's taken away some of the fun in life. So we want you to get back to that fun, because there is fun to be had. So I'm going to give you some specifics about how you can do that. Some of these things sound fairly minor, but I can tell you the impact is huge. So one of these situations that you need to chase is trying to find something that provides that feeling of flow. Now, that book by Mahaley, I can't pronounce his surname, is it's a brilliant book, and it's talking about flow, which is the state that you're in when everything comes naturally, you're totally absorbed in a project, and time just dissolves. Now, whatever it takes, whether it's pottery, whether it's cleaning your car, if it's something high level and you enjoy it and you're passionate about it, you have a chance to be able to enter that flow state. So think back through your life. Think about the things that provide that flow state for you. Is it computer programming? I don't know. Whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about. It's when things just get so absorbing that there could be somebody talking in your left ear and you're not even going to hear them because you're so involved. So think about what creates flow and chase that flow. Number 2, find uninterrupted time. Now, there is a lot of green research. If we get out in nature, if we have fresh air around us, not only is it good because of the virus, blah, blah, but from our eyes and everything about our well-being, by chasing that green, outstretched horizon, that look where we can see forever, particularly by the beach, Michael, you're really lucky there. You've got a chance there because there's a lot of research into blue spaces as well. That is what we need to do. Find some level of nature with uninterrupted time, somewhere where we can be alone and be alone with our thoughts. Now, if you're getting too much of that, of course, it's a balance, but so many of us are dealing with interruptions from the kids, from life. So we need to chase some time where it's just ours. Number 3 is finding joy in the little things. So that can get back to the gratitude that Michael and I were talking about, but also sharing that joy with somebody special. So we call those in relationships bids, like come over here and have a look at this, or did you see that? Just to be able to spread that joy to your loved one as well. And also, the next one is focusing on a small goal. This is really important because having that achievement, that endorphin rush, that will lead you on to larger goals. That next step and then the next step, that is really going to help get you out of that languishing state. So that is from the research. That's not just Michael and I pulling these ideas out. This is an extended area for research right now. Michael, what are your thoughts about that?
I think you've given us some great ideas, but you've got to actually get up and get going and start doing things and push yourself, because it's actually too easy to just stay that little bit extra time in bed or not go out. Oh, it's a bit of a nuisance, it's cold, or it's dark early in the morning, I'm not going to go for my walk. So you've got to start with internal motivation. You've got to have a reason for doing it as well. Life is good. Millions and millions of people who would trade places with you and where you are right now. So again, appreciate what you've got. And this is just one stage. It'll be interesting to look back how history sees these couple of years, the challenges of COVID, the challenges of inflation. But we're still living in the best country in the world. And I would suggest still in the best time in history. If we would have had COVID 50 years ago, they wouldn't have had the vaccines. Many more of us would have died.
Yeah, it's true. And we wouldn't be able to Zoom and keep in contact as easily. No. I read quite a lot from the 1918 Spanish Flu Diaries, and I have to say it was just horrendous. So they sent home 1 month's worth of schoolwork to each of the school children in that time. And of course, by the time they corrected it, because they had to get it back and correct it, I mean, time's passed in these little kids' lives. So we were so lucky in so many ways. And I think that's easy to lose sight of. Yeah. Now, I wanted to also chat with you, Michael, about people moving through different life phases and potentially considering giving up their key line of employment. We've heard about the Great Resignation. It's affecting so many people. We've heard about the levels of dissatisfaction, where currently 63% of people are looking for a new position. My goodness, that's almost record numbers. We've got hospitality in trouble, where they can't get good people because the international students aren't here, but also people are becoming very picky about what they're prepared to do and who they're prepared to hang out with. So this is the area that I want to raise for discussion. I'm curious about your views. When it comes to share trading, I know there are some very specific things I say before people should leave their role. So maybe I'll run through those first, Michael. How about that? And then we can get your views. So one of the things when you're looking, should I quit my job or not, is I always suggest that people bank their primary source of income for at least 1 year and share trade on the side of that, just to see whether they can provide for their family, whether they can support themselves in that particular scenario. I think when I first left my job, I had a health issue. My arms didn't move for 3 years and I had my back to the wall. It really wasn't a great time for me at all. Luckily, I've regained full use of my arms, but I still have to have a lot of physio, and it has a few other impacts in my life. But at least by having that situation, I had hunger. What it didn't do is it didn't make me trade effectively. I would rather you provide for yourself the best possible method to be able to plan an exit, have the money so that you're not undercapitalized, and gracefully wind back on your hours and then make an eventual move out, instead of storming into your boss's office and telling that person to shove it. So, so be careful about what you need here to be able to do this effectively. Think about whether you have sufficient capital, and that 1 year will be able to give you a clue, but also think about how long you've got to go till you're going to have potential health issues, because we know the majority of our money comes into play towards the last 1/3 of our life. So we need that money for health, for moving into retirement villages, for care. And that is something that's very easy to underestimate when you're in your 30s and 40s and even 50s. So also consider, if you're a share trader, do you know how to make money regardless of market conditions? I mean, the market shenanigans right now, if you don't know how to make money, if you are only available to make money in a bull market, you are going to suffer. You're going to find things there that are going to play with your mind, because scared money never wins. And I don't want to see you in that situation. And the other component is, have you spoken to your loved ones? Have you, if you've got a spouse, have you discussed this with your spouse so that they know what you're thinking of doing? And do you have their blessing? Because you're going to need their support emotionally, if not financially. You give away a lot of things by giving up your role. I always think these snap decisions people make are usually the wrong decisions. Michael, I'd be curious to hear your views and hear how property fits in with that mix when people want to be a full-time investor.
Well, I believe the property investment journey has a number of phases. The first one is educating yourself, learning about what to do. Then there's an asset accumulation phase, which requires taking on debt as your property portfolio grows. So therefore, you need serviceability. The banks want you to have an income, and unfortunately, share trading or other side hustles aren't seen by the bank as permanent income, a consistent income, so you need a real job. And then over the next stage, you slowly lower your loan to value ratios, and eventually you can live off your property portfolio, but it's usually a 20, sometimes a 30-year journey. And just to make things clear, if anyone says to you property only or shares only, I'd be also very cautious and I'd run away, because I think to build a level of wealth, you need a combination of assets. So eventually you should get to the point where you have your own home with no debt so that you can live comfortably, and you need a portfolio that's going to give you income to replace your personal exertion income. And until you're at that point, you shouldn't be leaving the workforce, in my opinion. Now, having said that, that income will come from a number of areas. We all have superannuation. There's also your property portfolio, your share portfolio, and share trading to supplement that income's a great way of doing things. So leaving your job too early doesn't make sense for me, is if you're in the asset accumulation stage of your life. And Louise, I found a lot of people actually don't want to leave their job. They actually just want to have a choice of working when they want to, how they want to, and with whom they want to, because otherwise the days can get pretty boring.
They can. Actually, that's probably why you and I hang out together a little bit, isn't it, Michael? Because we go, oh my gosh, it's a long day ahead. Yeah. And I think that can be a lovely thing too, but to plan for it is the key here. Now, as you're listening to this interview, have a think about the similarities between Michael and between me. Don't think about Okay, you have to be one or the other, as Michael said. I think there are so many more similarities than differences, and think about how you can apply this to your particular investing and your life. Now, Michael, I know we've covered a lot of ground here. We have talked about where we're at in the world right now, some methods that we've been able to use to overcome some of the psychological effects so that we're not buffeted by the world. Is there anything here that you wish that we had have covered that we haven't covered yet?
I think you've got to be prepared for things to go wrong. Things will go wrong, but resilient people, mentally tough people that we spoke about a short while ago, they just embrace failure because they know it's just part of the road to success. No one's ever experienced true success in whatever it is, whether it's share trading, in business, in property, without embracing failure. In fact, I often jokingly say I'm a real success at failure, but I don't dwell on my mistakes. I actually get up one more time. So if you have had challenges, setbacks, whether they're health, whether they're business, whether they're share trading, whether they're property, don't fixate on your problems that you're facing. That just gets you into a negative spiral, negative emotions, and it hinders your performance, definitely in trading, doesn't it, Louise? But also in all areas of your life. So just accept the fact that even if you've got a plan for your plan not to go to plan, and you won't be too disappointed.
I love it. Now, Michael, could you give us some ideas about your business, how you can help people and how people can stay in touch? And I'll do the same straight after, because a lot of our listeners may not have been exposed to your methods before, even though you've been a very regular guest on my show, talkingtrading.com.au. So I would like to know how that part of it can come together for the people interested in contacting you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we don't sell property, so therefore we are independent and we give holistic advice. So we have a wealth advisory business. We've got a financial planning business. We start always by putting a plan together for clients, and we bring their future into the present and help them plan to become the person they plan to become. And as I said a minute ago, it's not just property. Having said that, then we help them implement that plan through strategic property advice, buyer's agency, our property management division that you kindly said that we look after your properties as well, manages over $2 billion worth of assets for clients. We've been involved in $4.5 billion worth of transactions. And my team advise using the frameworks, the strategies I've built up over 5 decades, and we've been helping clients with for over 20 years. So it gives safety in challenging times like this. So we give people direction, certainty, and outperforming results. Well, Louise, I'm not sure if I told you, just recently our clients' results were audited, and they've found that our clients are 7.3 times more likely to own 6 or more investment properties than the average investor. In other words, our clients are 7.3 times more likely than the average Australian to be in the top 1% of property investors, and that's because of the strategic plan. So just go to metropole.com.au, and if you listen to podcasts, which obviously you do because you like Louise's podcast, then go to look for the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice a week I give some of my thoughts.
And we'll put all of these links into the show notes as well. And if you're one of Michael's clients and you have a curiosity about the share market, come over to my podcast, so talkingtrading.com.au, and I would love to see you subscribe to that podcast. Each week I interview market leaders, I talk, and my business partner Chris Tate talks as well, about how you can get the best out of the markets, what you should trade, where you should trade it, when. And we also aim to have that longevity view, which is something that definitely Michael and I share, this long-term outlook, so that we put money into your pocket and we make it stick. This is not a flash in the pan type of share market program. This is something that is a life journey, and we believe it's the start of a movement. I'm so glad that you're a part of this, Michael. I've so enjoyed spending the time and the years together that we have. If you're a listener right now, have a think about the things that you can implement. Don't let this just slip by. You need to take these action steps and put them into action over the next 48 to 72 hours. Otherwise, it'll just slip back into the ether and it won't be of value. Any parting words, Michael?
I just wanted to say thank you very much, and there's still great times ahead for us. So the short-term challenges are just part of the cycle.
Love it. We will see you next week on Talking Trading and the Michael Yardney podcast. Chat with you then.
Thank you, Louise. Well, as I explained at the beginning, today's show is going to be a little bit longer, but I hope I've given you a bit more direction moving forward. But again, if you're like most property investors, you're still probably wondering, what should you do at present? And there isn't a right answer because I don't know your particular circumstances. Should you buy? Should you sell? Should you just wait? But that's why I believe you could trust my team at Metropole to give you the right answers, to give you direction, to give you guidance, to help you get outperforming results, because we have no properties for sale. What that means is when you sit down with my team, we initially start by putting a plan together for you, giving you strategic property advice, building you a personalised strategic property plan that brings your future into the present so you can do something about it now. And then, and only then, you may choose to use our buyer's agency or our wealth advisory or property management or renovations or development arm. But you need advisors who've been around the block a few times. So my team have many experienced investors who now, over the years, have become property strategists. They've got accounting background, economics background, banking background, but have lived through times of inflation, lived through times of high interest rates, not just young beginners who have never invested in times like this. And we share the strategies that I have fine-tuned over 5 decades, and we've been helping clients with for over 20 years, and we've been involved in $4.5 billion worth of asset transactions, property transactions to help our clients grow, protect and pass on their wealth. So why not go to metropole.com.au, find out about what we do and have a chat. See how we may be able to help you in these challenging times. We help fix problems. We help prevent problems. We help get you outperforming results. Now, I'll be back again twice a week with this show, but you can catch me in between. Just look for me on social media or go to the Property Update private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group, where every day I leave some tips, some information, a chart, something I don't leave elsewhere. As I said, I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?